I'm going to wait because I want to be able to see you. I'll eat it later. Thank you.
Good, sweetheart. Hello, everyone. Okay. Paymane's got a haircut. Well done, girl.
Venerable Robina, my daughter said, now you look just like Venerable Robina.
There you go. Wow. Well done, girl. Who knows what it signifies? Okay, sweethearts. So then, Eloise, what do you think we should talk about this time? You made some suggestions in your email. Should we continue from last week, or we take another topic? What do you all think?
Well, we could either do accumulating merit and wisdom through the 6 perfections, or we could do calm abiding and special insight.
Okay, well, so we did a bit of, we talked all about the special insight last week, didn't we? I mean, we talked about it as, dependent arising and realizing emptiness. So that's exactly what we're going to do that's what we're trying to do with special insight. So maybe we can start then, we can talk about, maybe we'll use Lama Yeshe's Mahamudra book as our basis for discussing these two, because it's a different take on it. So that might be a good discussion, and it'll follow on from last week as well. So we just think we're going to be here together for this 90 minutes to think about, analyze, contemplate, internalize, these words coming from the Buddha, coming from the mouths of our holy lamas, who got this information from their holy lamas, who got it from their holy lamas, and we can track it back, can't we, in an unbroken chain of living beings, all the way back to the Buddha. That's what lineage means. It's actually very powerful. There's a lovely word in Tibetan, rigsin, knowledge holder. And we know we learn all information like that. I always think of my mother. She was my cook. She was my cooking guru, my cake making guru. So where did she get the information from? Her mother. Where did she get it from? Her mother. That's how knowledge is passed down. So it's all oral. So, there is oral lineage of knowledge. It's marvelous. This is exactly what's happening here. So we think we get the blessing from all our holy lamas, all the knowledge holders, so we can realize this information as well, so we can quickly remove our own suffering, so we can be a benefit to others. Thinking this is why we're here together. So the 6 perfections is the final stages on the path for the bodhisattva, so just remind ourselves where it all fits. In the very first level of practice, as Lama Zopa very respectfully referring to it as the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability. And then I like to call it junior school. And that's the very first level of the Lamrim, where we abide by the laws of karma. Then the next level, we start to work on our mind and get to the root of suffering. And that's the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the middle capability. So and from these 2, we then develop renunciation of suffering and its causes. We've got a deep understanding of what suffering is. We have a deep revulsion for suffering, and we know the causes. So we're out of here, baby. We want to give up suffering and its causes. So that's the teachings and practices shared with the Hinayana practitioners, with the Theravadan practitioners in Burma and Thailand. But then if we're on the Mahayana path, we will continue. We won't graduate there. If we're going to graduate there, we would then get shamatha, calm abiding, and then we would realize emptiness, and we get insight into emptiness. Then we would leave samsara, we wouldn't come back. But we're on the Mahayana path. So concentration, calm abiding, and special insight, which technically are actually Theravadan teachings. They're Hinayana teachings. They're not Mahayana in their nature, but they're taught in the framework of the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva on the Mahayana path. So we delay, so they're not presented here. So we continue onto the Bodhisattva path. And so this next series of practices, this is the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the greatest capability. So now we continue to work on our mind. That never ceases. But now it's in relation to developing bodhicitta, this paradigm shift in the mind, such that we now only have others to think about. We've done the job of fixing ourselves. We don't need to think about ourselves anymore. So now we only want to benefit others. It's an outrageous level of realization, starting with equanimity and then continuing through love and compassion, then great compassion, and then finally bodhicitta culminates with bodhicitta. Then we enter the final stages of the bodhisattva path, and that's the 6 perfections. So the first 4 you know, there's this analogy I use all the time, but it really works. It's a really way of presenting the whole path. It's a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So the wisdom wing is all the nuts and bolts of the first and second scopes, and the compassion wing is the third scope, the great scope, you know. So here, the first four perfections are like perfecting the compassion wing, and the last two are perfecting the wisdom wing. So the first four, you know, we practice the bodhisattva goes from life to life, perfecting generosity, the morality of not only refraining from harming, which is the morality we've been practicing up to now, but not only that, but now also the morality of benefiting others. Then the practices of patience and perseverance. These are the first four. So let's just mention the last of these one, because this is the crucial one. This one of what they call, you know, enthusiasm, joyful effort, enthusiastic perseverance. These words, we hear the words and we like, it sounds nice. Perseverance, we understand that word. We understand effort. Joyful effort, we're not so sure, you know, but that's what they call it. But this is the absolutely vital quality of the bodhisattva. Without this, there is no success. And we know this in our own daily lives. Without enthusiasm, without perseverance, we will not accomplish anything. So, of course, here, the perseverance, the effort they're talking about isn't just in pursuing samsara. That's not technically even perseverance, that's just attachment. But it's a good analogy to use to understand it. So the crucial quality, you can have morality, you can have wisdom, you can have compassion, but if you don't have this joyful effort, the fourth one, you will not succeed. It's very simple. So it's a crucial one to understand. So before we even get to the last two, which is where we're perfecting the wisdom wing, and we'll talk about, like I said, in reference to Mahamudra, which is a different take, a different approach, you know, to these two. Let's just look at this one, because I think it's the vital one, this one of enthusiastic perseverance. So the way to really understand what this practice is, to put it in stark focus, we look at the opposite. And the opposite of it is called laziness. So let's analyze that, because it's a very general word, isn't it? We kind of usually think of it as kind of you're slothful and you can't be bothered and you slop around and you walk around your PJs all day and you can't be bothered. You can't be bothered, you know. That's how we imagine it. But there are three levels of laziness. When we understand this, it really deepens our understanding of how we need to practice this enthusiasm, because without it, we will not succeed. It's very simple. So I think they talk about two kinds of laziness, but I really think the first one we can divide into two. And it's really logical. The first one, you know, the first kind of laziness is simply called, I can't be bothered. So analyze this carefully. Let's look into it. Let's unpack it. What is the thing we can't be bothered doing is really obvious. It's the thing that attachment doesn't like. So attachment, there's multitudes of ways of talking about attachment, you know. So as we know in the Bodhisattva path, they talk about attachment mainly in terms of these 8 worldly dharmas, these 8 different, more primordial ways that this attachment works. And the more, I mean, we learn this first in the middle scope. And as you know, as Lord Buddha says, the main cause of all suffering in samsara is attachment. This is a very shocking idea to us until we understand the Buddha's teachings, because it's not the way we think in the world, for sure. So there's the way here to think about attachment as the connected to laziness is this primordial craving to be in our comfort zone. Think about it. Think of anything, and I'm talking ordinary samsara here, thinking anything you've had to learn to do. You've learned you have to make effort. By definition, you only have to make effort in something you don't know how to do. It's obvious. If you know how to accomplish something, it's effortless. So necessarily you've got to make effort. So what is it that stops us from making effort is attachment. Attachment is this, here in reference to this particularly, is this craving to be comfortable mentally and physically. We absolutely know this, and this is the most obvious one here. I can't be bothered. What do you mean can't be bothered? It's too much effort. What do you mean too much effort? Because you don't like being uncomfortable. The body doesn't like being uncomfortable, and the mind absolutely doesn't want to be uncomfortable. So this is the grossest level, and the one we tend to think of as laziness. And it's the most obvious one. It's the most, will not accomplish anything. So the second one, which is what they tend to call this first one, but this has got two parts to it. This one is really tricky. And it's called, oh, I'm too busy. I'll do it later. This one, hang on. This one is, is the next level. What is the thing you're too busy to do is the thing you can't be bothered doing. And the thing you can't be bothered doing is what attachment doesn't want, because it's too much effort. But this is a really tricky one, because we spend most of our lives putting things off. And the thing you put off is the thing that attachment doesn't like. But the thing is, we say, I'll do it later. We lie to ourselves. We're basically lying, we sort of feel like we're getting ourselves off the hook. Oh, I'm too busy. I can't do it now. I'll do it later. And we've got, this is happening. This happens in the mind so quickly, we don't even notice it. We just gloss over it, and it's a lie, because we know later will never come. So this is one of the greatest sufferings. The lamas say that one of the saddest ways to die is to die with this terrible regret of the things you've put off doing. And the difference between a person who does things, who doesn't put things off, that's what His Holiness the Dalai Lama is like. That's what Lama Zopa Rinpoche is like. That's what the holy beings are like. There's no such thing as putting anything off. They just do things. And even relatively, we can see some people we know, accomplish so much more because they don't put it off. So it comes down to attachment and this craving to be comfortable. It's not attachment to food. It's not attachment to reputation. It's not attachment to, money. It's attachment to be comfortable. And because we know, it's like, using the analogy of going to the gym, just the analogy, it's so obvious. It's like you go to the gym and you start on your rowing machine or your jogging machine or whatever it is. And we know if the second, this is the point we understand, this is just an analogy. The second you start to puff, the second you start to pant and puff, the second you start to sweat, the breathing gets heavy. That's, we know, is the point at which usually we'll stop. Oh, I went to the gym today. Well, no, you didn't. Because we know this, the only way something will change in your body, which is why you're going to the gym, is when you make effort, when you go beyond that point and you push. You need to push. But we're such babies, we can't stand pushing. We all think we're going to have a mental breakdown, But it's just plain laziness. So this is what's fascinating. And it's so true if we think about this. The lamas would say the only time you will make effort to do something is when you are clear about the benefits. So the only way to make yourself make effort, the only way to push yourself, yes, indeed, incrementally. You don't do 4 hours at the gym and then break your back. You do it gradually. You push, you do 10 push-ups, and then you do 20, and you keep getting better at it. We know this, but we have to have enthusiasm. And that means we have to know the benefits. If you don't know the benefits of why you're doing anything, I promise you, you will not do it. Because why would you? Why would you want to make effort? Why would you want to puff and pant? Why would you want to go out of your comfort zone? The only reason that you want to go out of your comfort zone is because you know the benefit. So without this, no effort. We will not make, and so therefore we will not make any progress in our lives. And of course, here we're talking our spiritual practice. We're not talking about the gym here. This is an extremely important quality. And of course, it's incremental. You have to go one step at a time. But by definition, you won't progress if you don't make effort. It's really logical. And that means you have to know the benefit. So of course, it's hard. It's easy to see the benefit of going to the gym. And even then, most of us give up. It's easy to see the benefit of going on a diet, but most of us give up because we don't have enough enthusiasm, because we're not remembering the benefit. We give in to the attachment. We give into, forget about the gym, forget about diet. We give in to attachment. We give in to attachment. Attachment is our worst enemy, I tell you. The particular attachment, of course, with a diet is attachment to food. Attachment, the one about the gym is attachment to being comfortable. It's too much effort to sweat and puff and pant and go every night and wait for the muscles to change, They're just analogies. They're not even effort. They're just samsara. But we understand them. The quality that makes the bodhisattvas utterly unique, utterly extraordinary, is their enthusiasm, is their joyful effort. In the end, it becomes joyful. It is joyful in the end. They think in terms of eons, as His Holiness says, you know. And of course, to them, the effort to make is because their compassion is so tremendous that nothing will stop them giving up. Never, nothing will stop them never giving up on becoming a Buddha, because that's their goal. So that's huge. To have that level of compassion is absolutely huge, you know. So we've got to start somewhere. And that's why it's crucial. And we skip over this in the West. We think it sounds selfish. We've first got to know the benefit to ourselves. Even in the stages of practice of accomplishing bodhicitta, one of the in the 11 techniques, starting with equanimity, we have to think very carefully of the advantages to myself of giving up self-centeredness and the disadvantages to myself of being self-centered. We have to see the advantages to ourselves first. Then, of course, we can have the really powerful one of compassion for others. So this is a huge one. This is massive. Without it, we will not succeed. That's it. So we have to know the benefits and remind ourselves every single day, and then practice every day, incrementally, a little bit, and catching the mind when you put things off, you know, when you put things off. I mean, I always talk my own example. You know, I'm a nun and I'll do Dharma jobs. I'm fortunate. Most of my jobs are Dharma. I'm very happy. I'm fortunate. But still, there are certain jobs in my computer, in my lists, that I put off doing. And you see your mind so quickly. You see your jobs, and within a millionth of a second, I've skipped over the ones that I don't want to do, and I run to the ones that I want to do. We do this, and so you leave these other jobs undone for months. And then the incredible thing is when you make the effort and you don't put it off and you do the job, it took you 10 minutes. So you're carrying around this burden unnecessarily, you know. This is a huge practice, I tell you. But we've got to catch our mind. We're so tricky. This laziness that says, I'm too busy. So basically, too busy means you haven't prioritized it. You haven't prioritized it, basically. When you prioritize something, then you won't say you're too busy. I'll do my practice later. I'm too busy. I've got to go to work. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to get my lunch. I've got to go here. I've got to go there. I'll do it later. No, it's just you won't. So when you prioritize something, are all the same. When we start to practice, we get enthusiastic and we give up. One of the commonest things that people ask is, how do I get some perseverance? How do I get discipline to do my practice every day? It's a lifelong practice, I tell you, I promise you. I mean, the thing is, if you're at the level of, say, people like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is in the state of bliss, his mind is in the state of bliss, at that certain level of realizations, your mind is just naturally blissful. You know, it's effortless, utterly effortless. But even for them, it's not the joy that makes them want to do their practice. It's because of their compassion. So we're not at that level. If we got pleasure from our practice, we'd at least do it. But it's hard work, isn't it? Hard work to sit, do your sadhanas, do your thing, do your breathing, do your this, do your water bowls, get there, do your prostrations. It's hard work. It takes effort every single day until we get a certain level of realizations. We just have to keep doing it. And the interesting thing is, when we know that when we make effort, we are so happy. When we make effort, we are so pleased. When we make effort. So it's a huge one. It's really, the ego is so sneaky, you know. Then there's the third level of laziness, the worst one. Excuse me. And that says, oh, no, I'm not capable. I can't achieve that. That's a common one. Again, look at the ordinary world. It's all just samsara, but look at that. You see the people, the handsome people at the gym who've got their divine toned bodies. No, I can't do that. No, not possible. People who, say you want to, like anything, to achieve anything, ordinary world achieve. Oh, no, it's too much. I can't do that. No, I couldn't do that. No, that's just impossible. I can't do that. You want to become a doctor? No, it's just 10 years of study. I couldn't do that. It's too much. No, I can't do that. Someone me up, Robina, you want to come to that retreat in France? His Holiness is giving a retreat in France next week. Oh, no, I can't do that. It's not possible. No, I can't do that. My husband won't let me. Oh, no, I've got no money. No, I can't get off the job. No, I can't do that. Can't do that. Even the baby things. This is why it's so important to know this is a crucial step. It's a thing we have to really unpack. The fact is, you have to first know that you want to do something. I mean, this could be anything. Like, let's say you decide to move somewhere. You're moving and you live in one place and you decide you want to move somewhere else and get another job. But the first thing you say is, no, it's not possible. No, I wouldn't. I'll never find another place. No, it's too expensive. No, I don't know anybody there. No, I can't get a job there. Well, think of 27 different reasons why it's not possible. That's this kind of laziness. I'm not capable, because again, it's all to do with attachment and being in our comfort zone. It's scary as hell to make changes, or to go off and do a retreat in France in 2 weeks' time when you never thought of it before. All we do is think of all the obstacles. Not possible, too expensive, my husband won't approve, or the kids, I can't do that, or my job won't, 72 different reasons we give, because it's attachment to our comfort zone, still an attachment to reputation with that one. An attachment and scared of change. We want to be in our comfort zone. That's attachment. It's attachment. So the first thing is to know, what do you want? You've got to have your goal. What's your goal? What do you want to achieve? You've got to know the goal. So then that's why, let's say you ring me up and say, would I come and do that retreat in France? Instead of immediately seeing 17 reasons why you can't do it, you say, what a good idea. I think I would, yes. And this is why we really, this is a really crucial step in our mind that really takes us time. What we do is we go retreat in France in 2 weeks, and then immediately we see the obstacle. Instead of going retreat in France in 2 weeks, let's look at that retreat. What is it? Yes, I would love to do that retreat in France in 2 weeks. But we don't even give ourselves permission to say even, I would like it. Let's say there is a better job in another place, which means you have to move, sell your house, go here, go there. It's the best job for you. So you have to first know that, yes, I want that job. Then you see if it's possible. Then you conquer the obstacles. And of course, if it's not possible, then you don't go to the retreat in France. But you first have to say, yes, I want that. We don't even allow ourselves to do that. We cut ourselves off at the knees and say, it's not possible. This really takes practice, I promise you. It really takes practice. The commonest one will say, oh, I haven't got the money. No, I can't do that. I haven't got the money. No, not possible. And then we sit in our comfort zone. We just relax. Oh, no, it's not possible. And that's the worst laziness of all, because it is possible. It is possible. It is possible. It is possible to get Shine. It is possible to get concentration. It is possible to get enlightened. It is possible to get bodhicitta. Just one step at a time, that's all. So we have to say, what do I want? We don't even do that mostly. We just sit in our comfort zone and kind of stay lazy, acting like we're being virtuous. You have to know what you want. Of course, we're talking virtuous here. We're not just talking wanting to kill somebody. We're not talking just to make more money, just you want to get rich. We do a better job at that. You have to know what you want. What do I want? You state it. And then you make the effort and you go one step at a time. This is huge. This is the opposite to enthusiasm. So enthusiasm is the opposite to these three kinds of laziness, which we have to conquer very consciously every day. So I wanted to say that. So let's get to the 6 perfections then. That's the wisdom wing, where you perfect the wisdom wing. So the typical way, and Lamy talks about this in his Mahamudra book, the typical way of, getting insight, the 6th perfection, it means specifically here, it means getting insight into emptiness, insight into the ultimate way that things exist. Insight is a great word in English. It's a very clear word. It means inner seeing. It's a very good word. It means understanding something experientially. It means that, doesn't it? In ordinary daily life, You'll say, I was thinking through a problem and I got some insight into it. It means you're experiencing it. It's a perfect word in English. So of course, all the way through Buddha's teachings, if we're trying to be a Buddhist, we're learning about karma. So obviously we've got to get insight into karma. We're learning about impermanence. We've got to get insight into impermanence. We're the mind and the delusions, we've got to get insight into that. We're learning about bodhicitta, we've got to get insight into that. We've got all the 6 perfections, we've got insight into those. And finally, insight into the ultimate way that things exist. Everything else is conventional. So of course we need insight into everything. It means direct experience of it. It's obvious, it's clear, not just the words. That's the final goal. All the stages of the path are mapped out perfectly, leading us through the conventional reality of karma, the mind, renunciation, bodhicitta, all this, leading us to the final, ultimate way that things exist, which of course is emptiness. The whole path is structured in such a way. We need insight into everything. That's what being a Buddhist means, and that'll turn us into a Buddha. So the crucial one, in order to get insight, because it's necessarily at a subtler level of mind, it is utterly, utterly, utterly impossible, as Laziness says in Mahamudra, to get insight into emptiness without calm abiding. Without calm abiding. So calm abiding is this, shine, shamatha in Sanskrit, this amazing result of accomplishing concentration, certain level of samadhi, concentration, single-pointed concentration, one-pointed concentration. And it's this genius technique invented by these Indians well before the Buddha that enables us to completely subdue the conceptuality, the grosser uncontrolled conceptuality, and the sensory consciousness. So when you've got that shine, when you've got that calm abiding, then you've got this super, super, super capable, laser-like level of mind that you can then use effortlessly in the second mode of meditation in order to get insight into the ultimate way that things exist, which is what we talked about last week. So without shine, without shamatha, it is impossible, only because the delusions that prevent us from seeing emptiness, the ego grasping, the root delusion is so primordial, it is impossible to uproot without a subtler level of mind, which you gain in calm abiding, So the classical way, as Laziness talks about in Mahamudra, the classical way of getting insight into emptiness is you listen to the teachings, you think about their meaning, and then you internalize that on the basis of calm abiding, whatever level of concentration you have. And then, you start your session with whatever concentration you have, and then you go to the second mode, and then the method you use in the classical technique, the method you use to get insight is the method of what's called analytical meditation. Now that term throws us because we think it's a contradiction, because we have a very deep sense, especially in the West, that the word meditate is meaning simply shamatha, is meaning calm abiding, is meaning concentration, is meaning non-conceptual. No, not at all. The word meditate in Tibetan is the verb gom, to familiarize. So what you're doing, so the method you're using in the second mode of meditation is analysis. And it's a fancy word for the verb to think about something, to think about something. So we know that's how we realize anything in our world. We know perfectly well. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a musician, you listen first. There's three levels. You listen first to the theories. You then have to think about it in a kind of make it coherent. And then you internalize it. And of course, when it comes to music, you play, your fingers do the work of what's in your mind. The fingers express what's in your mind. That's the experience. If you're doing cooking, you first listen to the methods, the recipes, you think about how they're coherent, and then you make the cake. We understand this system. We are brilliant at this system. We call it science. The methodology is totally familiar to us, but it confuses us when we hear it in something like Buddhism, because we've got this weird idea of religion is kind of different. It's not different. It's exactly the same. So then the method of getting insight is to think about dependent arising. The king of logics, as Laziness puts it, the king of logics to prove emptiness is dependent arising. So the best method is to think about dependent arising. That's what you're utilizing your mind with. That's what your mind is doing, is thinking through the logic of dependent arising. So then what happens is it will trigger an insight. It will trigger an insight. That's how you get insights. And on the basis of calm abiding. So the more scattered your mind is, the less concentration you have, the less you can think through things and the less insight you'll get, because your mind just stays very superficial. The more concentration you have, which you get from the first mode of meditation, the fifth perfection, the more teachings you've heard, say on dependent arising, the more sophisticated will your thinking be when you move into the second mode of meditation. You will do analysis, you will think it through logically. And the deeper your concentration, the more knowledge you have, the deeper the insight that is triggered. This is a classical way you would use the two modes of meditation in one session. One, you get some concentration to the degree that you've got it. You've listened to your teachings. You've listened to the class on dependent arising. You've got your notes, so it's in your mind. You go home. You do some concentration to the degree that you can accomplish it. You move to the second mode. Then you start thinking. Now, when we hear think something through, we kind of go, like I say, you know, we don't quite understand it, because we know when it comes to math, you've got to think it through. You've got to use your noggin. You've got to think of all those words you learned in class and think them through coherently until eventually you taste the meaning. That's exactly what you're doing here, not a fraction of difference. So when we think about getting insight into emptiness, and then we think about analytical meditation on emptiness, we don't quite know what it means. Well, you sort of think everything's empty, everything's empty. I'm thinking everything's empty, waiting for a penny to drop. That's idiocy. What you think about is, let's say, for example, dependent arising, that triggers the insight. That triggers the insight. So what you do in a classic session of these two together, you do your concentration, first mode of meditation. You get whatever level of concentration you've got. You go to your second mode now, and you proceed to use that focused mind to do clear analysis, clear logical thinking on the dependent arising that you've heard in your class. And then at some point it will trigger the insight. So then you stop the analysis and you go to the first mode of meditation, which is concentration. And then you focus, you concentrate on that insight, on that feeling that just arose. It might last 1 second. Then you go back to your analysis, and then it'll trigger another insight, and you focus on the insight. That's how you combine these two methods in one session. That's the classical way, as Lama says, that he learned in the monastery. All the study, all the philosophy, all the analysis, they did all their debating, and then you would internalize it all in your meditation. That's using the two modes of meditation to get special insight into emptiness. Of course, the deeper your concentration, the subtler and the more sophisticated your analysis, the deeper the insight, until eventually you will get, for the first time, a non-conceptual, direct insight into the fact that there never has been, isn't, and never could be an independent I, as we discussed last week. That's how you use the two modes of meditation. The result, each of them is known in the perfections. They're each known in terms of the result. The first one's known as calm abiding, which is the result of practicing concentration. And the second one is known as special insight, which is the result of doing analysis, doing analytical meditation on the various logical arguments you need to use, in particular dependent arising, the king of logics, utilizing that, all the different arguments we used last week, you know, like the way we said it, that we talked about how in the 4-point analysis of the IKEA box example. You've got to establish with confidence that there is, first you establish what you think this I is that you're looking for. Second, you then have to establish that the I is either oneness with or separate from those parts in the box. And once you're clear that there's neither an I that's independent of the other parts, nor is the I oneness with the parts, when you finally got that analysis, this demands analysis. This demands clear thinking. The subtler your concentration, the subtler the analysis, and therefore the more likely an insight will be triggered. Or dependent arising, all the different logics about dependent arising, the two truths, all these different things. You utilize all the different logical arguments. to trigger the insight into the fact that there has not been, isn't, and cannot ever be that kind of I. So as Amiyeshi says in Mahamudra, it's different. Same techniques. One's called concentration, one's called calm abiding, and one's called insight. Same. But the method is different. So the first one is exactly the same as concentration, but how you accomplish the concentration in Mahamudra is not by concentrating on a deity or Shakyamuni or on your yidam, which is the classical method in Tibetan tradition, or indeed even on your breath. No, none of those. What you're focusing on to get shamatha is your actual own mind itself. And that's quite difficult. It's quite subtle. We can learn all about the meaning of the mind. But as His Holiness says, to actually experience your own mind is quite extraordinarily difficult. So it's a more sophisticated technique, but we can all practice it, you know. So the object of concentration in Mahamudra is the mind itself. So what does that mean? Well, the Lama talks about the object of concentration is the conventional nature of the mind, which is called its clarity. And that means its non-physicality, which is just as a concept is quite subtle. But what you start with is whatever thoughts arise. Whatever thoughts arise. We should all learn this, absolutely, because this is vital. We know as a Buddhist, we need to be focusing on the mind. We need to be noticing the mind. So in concentration, you're not, you're observing the mind, you're paying attention to whatever thoughts arise, but you're not engaging in them, just like you do if you're watching your breath. The breath is easier because it's physical. So you're focusing on the breath. You're paying attention to the breath. The thing you don't want to get distracted by is, you don't want to get distracted. So you just keep watching the breath as it goes in. You watch the breath as it comes out. That's it. That's your job. Now, the thoughts are all there going crazy, but your goal, what you're trying to accomplish is the strength of will and the practice to not be distracted by the thoughts, not to absorb into the thoughts and have conversations, which is what we spend our lives doing. So it's a powerful practice. Here, though, the object is not the breath. The object is the thoughts themselves. And this sounds very peculiar to us. You're focusing on the thoughts themselves. You're not having conversation. You're not trying to work out what they are. You're not conjuring thoughts. Whatever thoughts arise, and we know thoughts come uninvited. So you're paying attention to those thoughts. So the point is what will happen if we're doing it properly as we progress. You're paying attention to the thought, but you're not engaging in the thought. And that's the distinction we have to make. And that's difficult. Even with the breath, it's difficult to distinguish. Because before, even when you're watching the breath, the thoughts are so close. You're so swimming in the thoughts that you can't even almost find the breath because the thoughts are so loud, aren't they? So this is the thing. If we're watching the breath, you're practicing allowing the thoughts to be there. One of the biggest misconceptions about concentration meditation, when you watch your breath, let's say, is you think you're supposed to make the thoughts go away. That's just plain silly. You'll go crazy. It's crucial to understand what you're trying to do. You're not trying to make the thoughts go away. You're trying to focus on the breath and to mind your own business and let the thoughts do what they like. And because you're not engaging in them, eventually they will calm down. That's the point. So here it's more subtle. You're not watching the breath. You're paying attention to the very thoughts themselves, whatever pops up, but you're not engaging in them. You're allowing them to come and go, and you're using them as your focus. So the same thing will happen if we're doing it properly. The thoughts, because you're not engaging in them, the thoughts will become calmer. That's the goal eventually, And then you'll begin to experience the conventional nature of our mind, which is its clarity. That's what they say. They call it that. So it's quite subtle, but of course we can try. So for most of us, we might not get much concentration by doing this technique, but I really think it's so important to remember the benefit that comes from doing concentration. For most of us, we won't get, they in the texts, they describe the cultivation of single-pointed concentration. Calm abiding is an example of single-pointed concentration. There are different stages of it. There are subtler levels of it. It's described in terms of 9 stages. So most of us mightn't even get past the first one. That's okay. But that doesn't mean there's no benefit. And the benefit is surprising. We think, oh, I had a good meditation because my mind was quiet. Well, I'm happy for you. But that's not necessarily the criterion of success. The criterion of success is that you allowed the thoughts. You minded your own business. You let the thoughts come and go. And that takes practice, because we're so absorbed in the thoughts normally. We're so involved in the thoughts normally. We've got no space, So we've got to step back. So the advantage of this, we might not get much concentration, but I can't stress this enough. This is not how we tend to think. The advantage of doing 5 minutes every morning, just pure concentration, just watching the breath, watching your thoughts, like in Mahamudra, is not that your thoughts will calm down, not so much, but that you can't, because you're concentrating, because you're making an effort to not engage in the thoughts, but they're still there, then naturally you're stepping back. So inevitably, even though you're watching your breath and you're doing very nicely, watching the breath go in and watching the breath go out, but you can't help but hear the thoughts in the back. That's good. They say in the texts, but Rinpoche says in Liberation, in the palm of your hand, that a sign of success, just at the first level of the 9, is that you think your mind's getting worse. Now, we all can see that, even if you don't meditate, because here we are trying to become more conscious. We're trying to become good little Buddhists and become conscious of our thoughts, aware of the mind, observing the delusions, observing the good qualities, beginning to distinguish between them, which is the actual job of being a Buddhist in daily life. We can see, we think we're getting worse. Oh my God, I'm so angry. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was supposed to get better. No, you're not getting more angry. You're noticing it. The tragedy before we start to become conscious, the tragedy of most human beings is we are utterly unconscious. We are utterly unaware of what the hell is going on between our ears. This is our tragedy, We only notice what's going on when it vomits out the mouth. We only notice what's going on when we're inert in bed from depression, because we don't pay attention. This is the miracle of Buddha's technique. He enables us to pay attention, yes, to your breath, but the thoughts, you can't help but hear them out of the corner of your eye. And that's what's powerful. So then you bring to bear this skill in your daily life. When you open your eyes after your morning session, you now are more conscious. You're working on the dishes, you're driving the car, you're talking to your kids, whereas before you would have been mindless and not knowing what you were thinking until you started screaming at the kids, not knowing what you were thinking until you start screaming at the drivers. But now, because you've been practicing paying attention to one thing and not following the thoughts, then now you become more conscious of the thoughts while you're doing the dishes, while you're driving the car. So that's the major advantage of doing some concentration meditation. You become more conscious. And that's the point. We've got this real tendency, this addiction to thinking, I should get rid of my thoughts. That's bizarre, You will eventually, yeah. But the whole part of the process of being a practitioner day to day, the key job of being a Buddhist is you need to distinguish in all those thousands of thoughts between the neurotic, deluded, ridiculous, I-based, fear-based ones and the valid, reasonable, appropriate, wisdom, positive, virtuous ones. That's the necessary first step. To chuck out all your thoughts is like nihilism. It's an absurd idea. We've got to learn to distinguish between the delusions and the virtues, and then to consciously, proactively grow the virtuous thoughts. That sounds peculiar to us. We just take everything as for granted, Yeah, I'm kind sometimes. That's just how I am. We say, we got to grow your kindness, for God's sake. Grow your generosity, grow your forgiveness, grow your patience. We don't think of it this way. We just think we're made this way and this is who I am and we're stuck in stone, you know. This is shocking. And then we've got to lessen the anger and lessen the jealousy and lessen the resentment and lessen the laziness. It's a conscious, proactive job. That actually is the real job of being a Buddhist every day, every second. It's hands-on. And concentration, a little bit every day, can begin you to help you become more conscious, you know. Of course, it's more than that. You need to listen to the teachings. You've got to know what the delusions are, what the virtues are by studying. So concentrate, as Lama Yeshe says in Mahamudra, and Lama would always encourage us, you know, he tries to get us excited. He talks about some of the qualities. I mean, it's like, as he says, it's almost unbelievable if we look at the ordinary view of the mind and what we're capable of in the modern psychology and modern neuroscience. It's like science fiction. Lama talks about it in Mahamudra. Just the results of calm abiding are absolutely unbelievable. You've utterly, completely got control over every tiny thought. Your mind is as vast as the universe, as Lama says, as if you can count every atom. You have incredible clairvoyance. You see the past, you see the future, you see people in distances. Your mind is absolute because you've accessed a subtler level, which we don't even posit as existing in the modern world. You've discovered a level of your mind that nobody even thinks exists in the modern world. So it's absolutely amazing. But the Buddha says we've had calm abiding in countless lifetimes, but we haven't used it to realize emptiness. We keep losing the plot, you know. The only reason to get calm abiding is to realize emptiness, to realize all the different stages of the path. The only reason to have it. And this is an interesting point. Lama Yeshe, in a book I'm editing of Rinpoche's at the moment, one of his deity practices, he talks about, you know, I mean, this is where we need to understand the background of the Buddha. He came out of this astonishing tradition. Okay, we give it the general label Hinduism, which is a bit sort of vague and a bit, I mean, I don't know all the different levels of philosophies that were existing, but they're the ones who created this technique. They had methods. By utilizing Shinei, they discovered methods to get rid of the grossest level of suffering, the suffering of suffering. They've discovered methods to get rid of the second level of suffering, the suffering of change. They even got methods to realize different levels. They even call it the form realm, levels of subtlety, levels of suffering, even beyond all the other ones, even get to this level of called the form realm, even the one called the formless realm. And there are 4 stages of that, as Rinpoche says, which is this deepest, subtlest absorption, in the deepest, subtlest of concentration. But as Rinpoche said, they didn't have an antidote to ignorance, to ego grasping, the root delusion. And that's where the Buddha diverged in his own direction. They already had methods to get rid of the suffering of suffering. They had methods to get rid of the suffering of change. They did not have methods to get rid of the suffering, the all-pervasive suffering. And that's where Buddha diverged in his own direction. So those systems are astonishing. These ingenious Indians are absolutely amazing. As His Holiness says, it was these genius Indians more than 3,000 years ago who were the ones that began the investigation to the nature of self. Unbelievable. Don't dismiss, you know. So sophisticated, such incredible philosophy. Unbelievable, amazing. And, you know, the Buddha went further. This is the point. So we've had concentration countless lifetimes. We've had this bliss. We've had clairvoyance. Unbelievably powerful minds. We've had it, but we haven't used it to realize emptiness. So the karma runs out and you're back in the suffering realms again. That's Buddha's unique finding, you know, the one about the understanding of emptiness, the understanding of the lack of intrinsic nature. Anyway, any questions, people?
Yes, Venerable. Pemene, please unmute.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Good, darling.
When you were saying about the Mahamudra and how we're focusing on the thoughts.
Yeah, that's right. Not the breath and not a visualization. Exactly. That's the first mode of meditation. That's how you get calm abiding, by focusing on the mind. Yes.
So What is focusing on the mind? Is it the consciousness? Is it the clear?
I understand. That's a good point. So now it's a very practical question. So okay, this is very sensible. So like everything that exists in the Buddha's view, everything that exists is a dependent arising. In particular, everything exists in dependence upon their bits and pieces. Everything's made up of bits and pieces. So we know this, a computer, a light, your hand, everything that exists has got many parts. You agree with this, Payman, right? Don't you? So the mind also has many parts. It's very simple. So the way to discuss it here, the mind is made up of different mental factors. We've got consciousness in general, and then there are all the different thoughts. The different thoughts, basically, aren't they? There's love and compassion and kindness and generosity. There are the negative thoughts, the positive thoughts, and then we've got this third category. And this is the point now, they're known usually as neutral, which is very confusing to us, but it means they're neither the negative ones. They're neither attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, and ego grasping, nor are they love, compassion, wisdom, generosity, forgiveness. They're the negative and positive thoughts, the virtuous and the non-virtuous ones. They're not those. This third lot, I call them the mechanics of the mind. And these are all the parts of our mind that are crucial to be able to do anything. So if you're a murderer, you need really good concentration. You need really good discrimination, which is the ability to discriminate between this and that. Because if you're a sniper and you kill the wrong person, you're in trouble. So you've got to have discrimination. So intention is the first one. Intention is I will. It's not virtuous or non-virtuous. Then you got attention. You pay attention. Then you have another one called mindfulness, which is really misunderstood in the West. It's referring to a very specific part of your mind that comes into when you're like, even just when you're making the cake and you just get distracted, the part of your mind that remembers what you're supposed to do and brings you back to the job of making the cake, that part's called mindfulness. So these are all the utterly crucial parts of your mind. I call them the mechanics of your mind. They're all the parts that you're utilizing in developing concentration. So the very first one is you've got to have intention. I will watch my mind. You've got to have intention first. So then the part of your mind that does the looking is called attention. You pay attention. Attention is the part of your mind that does the looking. It's supported by this part called mindfulness. Every time attention wanders off, mindfulness brings it back to the object. You've got all these different parts of your mind that you're trying to train. So they're the bits all doing their job. They're all called the mind. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really wonderful way to break it down.
Yeah. Otherwise, it gets very kind of trippy. My mind is watching the mind. We get very cosmic about it. It's just silly. You understand? Not like that. There's more to it than this. It is more sophisticated, but this is a simple way of doing it, a simple way of talking,
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Who else? Yes. Yes, William. Hello there. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
I want to ask about the object of refutation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell a story about myself
Good.
that maybe relates to it, get your feedback.
Okay.
When my son was going off to college, we took a road trip and we went back to my hometown where I was born, and we later went to his town where he had been born. And when I was there at the town, I wanted to show him what had been a very important part of my life, the tennis courts that I had grown up playing on. And so I had been back to the town since taking him, and the courts were there. So I take him to the spot, I know where it is, and I get there and I look out, and instead of seeing the tennis courts, I see a field. They were clay courts, and the field has grown up there, and there's no, at first glance, there's no sign of a tennis court at all.
I understand.
I'm completely shocked in my mind.
Yes.
I had I'm
There you go. There you go. There you go.
It's very important to me, and as I sit there completely aghast and agog that I show him the tennis courts that I know are there. They have to be there, and I keep looking then.
That's right.
Then finally, I see one rusty net post just kind of still at an angle. And I point to that and I say, look, there's a net post, as if that were to prove to him that, yes, these are in fact a tennis court. This was in fact a tennis court. Yes. And so I consider that in a way sort of like a realization of impermanence, of course, but also a realization of the emptiness of thinking that there is a permanent tennis
Absolutely.
court.
No, I think even no, forget the permanent one. That's another discussion. The emptiness one is a good example. In other words, this is the exact point, William. You had in your mind a view of a tennis court, a very clear picture of a tennis court, right? You expected the tennis court. You could see the tennis court. You imagined the tennis court. You believed in the tennis court. And then you got there, and actually what you found was the absence of a tennis court. So it's exactly right.
And is that not the same with the idea of the inherent existence of things, then, that the inherent existence of things is the tennis court that you've always believed in?
That's my point. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So basically what we are doing, we believe there is an inherent me. We believe in the inherent tennis court. We believe it is there. We believe it is there. And with absolute certainty, and this is the crucial point, we expect it to be there. And then one day in your concentration, you will finally, for the first time, see the absence of that I. Now, the tennis court could exist, but this one could never. So yes, the object of refutation for you, so then was the tennis court. You had to have a clear picture of the tennis court. And then when you saw the grass, you saw what did exist, then that showed you that what you expected didn't exist, which means you cognize the absence of the tennis court. Yes.
Right. Yes, it's like that, isn't it?
It's exactly right. That's like that. Exactly. And that's the point to remember. Your son would not have seen the absence of a tennis court because he didn't expect a tennis court.
Right. And
That's
even pointing out that net post rusting at an angle, it didn't really prove it to him.
No, precisely. It's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. That's a good example, William. A good example.
In analyzing the chariot analysis or other types of analyses, we then put these ignorant projections, these idea of a permanent.
The one of the chariot is doing a more precise. That's an analysis. No, that's a different analysis. That's a different analysis of the chariot. That's a different analysis. There's two. The object of refutation is either if we're looking for the I, it's either the I, the piece called I that is separate from the other piece, or you're looking at the person like the chariot and you're analyzing where is the chariot among those parts, and you will not find it. So that's a different analysis. You're looking.
But is that person
the equivalent of the chariot? Yeah, you're looking among the parts. Either you're looking for a separate part, or you're looking for among those parts which one would be the inherent I. You know.
Right. Is there any part to the chariot alone which would identify it unmistakably always as a chariot? And the answer there is, of course, no, there isn't.
That's right.
You need that combination, but then within the combination itself, you can begin the analysis also.
You won't find. That's right. So what's interesting though about it's only the Prasangika Madhyamika view that does actually say among the parts you will not find one fraction of anything that can bear the label I, whereas in all the other Buddhist views they all say there has to be something that you can label be the basis of the label.
And that's where the mind business comes in, which predates the Prasangika view by many centuries, and so has been held on to, and of course the Prasangika has to account for the mind too, but it doesn't account for it except for the fact that it's empty. There's no thing then. All these analyses talking about light and luminescence and all of these things. This is a pre-Tsongkhapa final view.
But as His Holiness says, though, as His Holiness says, which is good to remember, the reason that the I is empty is not because you can't find an independent I. It's because it is a dependent arising. That's the logic finally, because that means the real in the Pasika Madhyamika, the realization of the absence of the inherent I then brings the realization of the reality of subtle dependent arising, which is merely labeled. This is where the two truths.
Phenomenal.
Huh?
Yes, without the true truths, you
Yeah.
also have the solipsistic contradiction that,
Right.
for example, if I punch you in the nose, you have to, and you hurt your nose and it starts to bleed, you have to believe, if you have the Yogacara type of or mind only type view, that there's no me, there's no punch, there's no blood. All of that is just happening in your mind, which is in a way a negation of the conventional reality, the causal, the make things happen side of the equation. So
Right.
my answer to the mind only is just punch them in the nose and see how long they hold the view that it's all in their mind.
I understand. Yes, that's right, William. Exactly. It's a good point, William. Thank you so much. So who
Thank
else?
you for listening to
Thank
me.
you. Oh, it's a pleasure. Who else has a question or a point to make, please? Nobody. Okay. So,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, Honorable. Carola has a question.
Good, darling. Talk to me. Yes, my dear.
Carol, you'll need to unmute.
Okay, is that good?
Good. That's good. Yes.
So my computer went off. I mean, I heard the loud clap of thunder. And my electricity went out, my computer went out. And I'm sitting here, I ran out to see if anything was damaged, because we've had very bad weather.
What's the question then, darling?
So I don't know how to pose the question. It's just being in, it's my reaction to what happened. That I took myself out of this discussion. It's like, I don't know if it was my ego or thinking about my house or something getting hurt or I'm gonna be without electricity, that I couldn't get back into my.
So you don't have a question?
No, I don't have a
question.
question.
Okay, well, happy to hear your story. Thank you, Carola. I hope you're okay. You've settled down again, yeah?
But it happened just in a quick second.
Well, there you go. So maybe it's a
So
good sign. Maybe it's a good sign. Oh, darling. Thank you so much. So what about, who's that? Tukje Tashi. Yes, talk to me.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm really new and
Yes.
I actually met with you last week on Instagram, one of the
Yes.
Turkish ladies live chat. And
Oh,
then
wonderful. Yes, wonderful.
I checked your website and then I saw this Zoom online and I actually live in Canada and I am
Okay.
really new in these things. So I just want to leave my comfort zone, Robina, because I normally don't talk in these things. And I just
My
want to
gosh.
say thank you so much for you because you told us that we should just, search online
Yes,
and find
that's right.
things and learn.
Yes.
And I'm trying to do that and I
Well
appreciate
done,
you. And
girl.
I'll keep stalking you and try to jump in
Good.
these Zoom things. I had no clue about this Zoom one and I'm glad I did because
Good.
again I learned a lot and I'm so happy. So I just want to say thank you so
Wonderful.
much. I
I'm
don't
happy
have a
to meet you.
question yet because I'm really
happy.
new. I am trying to learn in
All
the
right.
future. I am hoping I'll come with questions
Wonderful,
too. So
darling.
thank you.
And I'm coming to Turkey next year.
Oh really? Okay, I live
But
in
you'll be
Canada.
in Canada. Oh, no good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I live in Canada. I moved
We'll
from
see.
Turkey, but hopefully
We'll
I'll see you in
somewhere.
summer. But even this is great. So thank you so much. I really
Keep-
appreciate
yeah.
for everything. Thanks.
Keep stalking.
Yes, I will be stalking
Good,
you. You'll
darling.
see me in those Zoom calls.
Good, darling. Thank you so much. Wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you, Robina. Thank you
Wonderful.
so
Thank you,
much.
darling.
Thanks.
Okay, who else then? Anybody? We have something to ask, something to say. What do you think?
Pemene has a question.
Good, Pamine.
Okay, I have to try and form the question. I've been reading this book, this Heart of Compassion, Dilgo Khyentse.
Yes.
Rinpoche. And from what I've just thought about it, he's saying something about I'm not sure really what the practice is and if it's fully relevant to what you're talking about, but he's saying that if you want to, I think what he's saying is if you want to get rid of some of these negative, I don't know, emotions or whatever it is, you can do a practice where you gather up, say, for example, your desire, you're meditating and you gather up all your desire, and then you gather up the desire of all other beings. You try and, gather that in your mind. And then you look directly into it and see what's there. And you just, well, I haven't done it, but he's saying that you just see thoughts. It's just thoughts, like these things that are negative or that create suffering are just thoughts. And so I thought it was a beautiful practice that you could just look directly into it.
That's right.
See that it's thoughts, and it's just basically nothing. It's nothing that we've created.
I think that's a variation of exactly what we should be doing. All the lamas would talk like is exactly when we start to do if we start as a typical person, like we all are, we take all these feelings as absolute concrete reality, don't we? And we believe utterly and completely in those stories. So when I think there basically one way I like to think about, and there's many techniques to do this, there's no question, and you can be as creative as you like, Pamene, in order to loosen the grip of these stories, because basically they are, when we understand, first of all, we've got sensory consciousness, and then we have mental consciousness, and the level we live at with the mental consciousness is literally at the level of thought. So I often use the example of saying there's a nice thermos. I might have used this last week. And so what we deduce is that my eye consciousness is seeing a nice thermos. But when we realize that the function of the senses is very limited, it merely sees shape and color. So then we have to ask the question, what part of my mind is cognizing a very nice thermos? And that consciousness, as Lama Zopa says, that's where the workshop is. And that's the point Rinpoche is making, that in the end, as we start to delve into these, they're basically thoughts, opinions, viewpoints, perspectives, ideas, concepts. That's it. They're things we have literally made up. And because we have the habit of believing in them, they have absolute concrete reality. So yes, starting to look into the thoughts, you're going to discover that is all they are, a series of concepts we've made up and that we believe in. So that's one of the ways, as Rinpoche says, bad enough we see things that way, but the worst thing is we believe them to be true. So what Rinpoche is simply saying is this method to loosen the grip of the truth of those and merely see them as a bunch of thoughts. Exactly. There's so many ways we can do that, to start to really see the mind. It's basically viewpoints we make up, and we're doing it every millisecond. And the tragedy is we've had them for so long, we believe they're absolute reality. And the thing is not even that. But if I've got attachment in my mind, desire, and I'm in love with Fred, then not only do I have this incredible excited attachment, but Fred, even as Lama Zopa puts it, Fred appears back to me in the aspect of my desire. So that desire literally paints divine Fred. And then we utterly believe that Fred in his bones is divine, where it's simply an interpretation of Fred. That's another way of putting it. That's exactly the point. Yes. Any methods like this, all the lamas have different ones to loosen the grip of this, they're basically a bunch of thoughts that we have made up. Some have a conventional reality. That is a thermos. You can't say it's not a thermos. So that is still a view, but we've made it up. So, and that really is proving emptiness. Everything's merely labeled. Do you understand? So it's loosening the grip of the truth of the stories we have that we grasp onto. So that's marvelous what you're saying. Rinpoche said it's marvelous. So do it.
Yeah, yes. I find myself laughing sometimes when it comes to mind about a thought.
There you go. That's right.
Like that exact example, the Fred thing is so classically funny.
Exactly.
And when you start to realize, oh, I just created that.
That's right. Exactly. So
silly. Exactly. Thank you.
All. Thank you so much. It's a good point. What else, dearest people? Anything other to bring up in our nice conversation? So seeing as we're talking about concentration, let's just talk a little bit about the method, I mean, the goal, like I said to Pamela before, there's these different mental states or mental factors that we have to learn to train in concentration meditation, So the very first, they say the two main obstacles to accomplishing calm abiding, the tendency of the mind to be completely excited, which is really the energy of attachment. Attachment is multifaceted. Attachment is always wanting something more. Attachment is dissatisfaction. Attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of things. Attachment also is just this excited energy, never stopping thinking, always. And attachment also is always anticipation, looking forward to something. So that's what the mind is doing all the time. And it's this energy of just constant agitated thinking, constant agitated thinking. So that's the obvious one major obstacle that prevents the mind from being focused. The other tendency of the mind, and this becomes a very tricky one, is the tendency for the mind to completely become dull and spaced out. So basically the accomplishment of calm abiding described in these 9 stages in the texts is really the gradual lessening of the excitement and the lessening of the dullness till eventually you've completely perfected mindfulness, then you've perfected alertness until eventually you get to the subtlest level where you now have perfected concentration. So it's utilizing and working with these different mental factors in the mind, these mechanics of the mind, until eventually you've perfected the ability just in 1 second, you can put your mind effortlessly into this subtlest state and you could stay there for months if you needed to, for months. I remember years ago hearing one of those mind and life conferences, His Holiness discussing with all the scientists the capacity of the human mind to concentrate. So I think the materialist model, the neuroscience, came up with something like 6 seconds, however they defined concentration. But this one, coming up from these Indians well before the Buddha, the mind can literally stay in this concentrated state. I mean, these Hindus, they could stay there for eons. The mind, but even conventionally having calm abiding, you could stay for weeks and months in a super subtle concentrated level, simply because the Buddhist view is asserting a subtler level of mind. So this level of concentration is, if we compare with the West, is super sophisticated. And, and so this is what we're aiming to accomplish. As I said, from Lama Yeshe talks about it in Mahamudra, some of the marvelous qualities you'd have, but they're like a bonus. They're just a bonus. They're not the goal. They're not the goal at all, And I think this is interesting. If we look at Tsongkhapa and look at his presentation of the Lam Rim, as I said earlier, you've got these different stages of cultivation of the practices. And so the second one, this middle scope, and it's the culmination of the wisdom wing. If you were on the Hinayana path, the Theravadan path, you would first control your body and speech and accomplish karma. Then you'd get to the next level and you do the 4 Noble Truths, and you understand suffering and its causes. You'll eliminate the suffering of suffering, you eliminate the suffering of change. And eventually you would then get calm abiding, and you would then get insight into emptiness, and you would finally eliminate the suffering, the all-pervasive suffering, and then you've accomplished your nirvana in one life or other, and then you won't come back. So they are actually Theravadan teachings. In fact, calm abiding is a Hindu teaching. So in the Lam Rim, Tsongkhapa doesn't present them there. He presents them in the context of the 6 perfections. And I mean, it makes sense, but I've heard, but because the bliss that is accomplished just by getting single pointed concentration is so astonishing, is so amazing, is so unheard of in ordinary daily life, that easily you can forget all about sentient beings. So very skillfully in the Lam Rim, Tsongkhapa gets us to get renunciation of suffering and its causes, then to go to the compassion wing and get bodhicitta, where you have these outrageous levels of wanting only to benefit sentient beings. Then you can easily get concentration and get the bliss, but you won't lose the plot. You will never give up sentient beings because your bodhicitta is so tremendous. So it's really interesting to think that way, It's the final stages of the 6 perfections. Yes, William.
On the development of calm abiding, I seem to recall there are you could have a subtle elation or a subtle sleepiness.
Yes, that's right.
You look up to the light, or you use the antidote to try to stabilize in the early stages of this concentration.
Right. Exactly.
As you develop further, you can begin to have the blissful pliancy aspect of the concentration.
That's right.
And that until such time as you have actually developed samadhi, it seemed, or whatever that you call it, the calm abiding, you don't have an instrument that is really capable of analyzing. I mean, you can do as you suggested and say, well, today I concentrated for 10 minutes, and so now I'm going to meditate on emptiness the best I understand, and maybe that's the way to do it. But it seems to me that the idea of developing calm abiding is a step unto itself, and it requires a good deal of observation. You know, the little
Of course it
person.
does, but my feeling is I think it would be, I think if you've achieved the first stage of the 9 stages, then to the degree that you have that concentration, it is that level of concentration that you get to do some analysis in emptiness. As your concentration deepens, so your analysis deepens. I don't think you wait till you've got calm abiding before you start contemplating emptiness. I think you'll never get there. We do it according to our capacity, I'd say. Absolutely, as Lama Yeshe puts out very clearly in Mahamudra, it will be impossible to get direct insight into emptiness without having accomplished calm abiding. That's a fact.
Yeah. All right. I think that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, definitely. Yes, people. Anything else? So the thing is, with most 99% of us here won't go off to the mountains and give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and get to the point of having no interest in society, no attachment to food, no attachment to clothing, nothing to think about, no mortgages, dogs, humans, houses, and all need for. I mean, or in other words, even to get to the point where you can go to the mountains, to get single point of concentration, you've already got to be a pretty qualified person. I always quote when I interviewed Venerable Rene, this marvelous Swiss monk, who's been a meditator for 45, 50 years. 45 years, I think. When I interviewed him back in 95 at one of his 2.5-year retreats, he said there was no way he would have been qualified to get even to the mountains without having, one, been a monk, done masses of study, masses of purification, and masses of teaching even. That's what qualified him to be ready, to have the prerequisites, to be ready to actually spend enormous effort for years, all day, every day, the effort to begin to focus. I mean, most of us, there's a lovely saying, and Lama quotes it in Mahamudra, the best seeing is not seeing. So look at most of us, we are bombarded all day, flooded, bombarded by thousands of images and concepts and wars and dramas and people and murders and killings. And I mean, the amount of information that we see and hear every day is stupendous. So it is, no wonder we can't calm our mind down. So it's obvious if you're able, I mean, just even to begin to start doing concentration in the mountains for your retreat, you're spending the first months and months and months forgetting all the rubbish of the world. You've got to forget it literally. How can you possibly concentrate if you have children, houses, mortgages, dogs? It's not possible. Of course, you do your best. But I mean, to get to even the point to be ready to begin to really get concentration, wow, you're pretty advanced already, you know. But it doesn't mean we can't try. Doesn't mean we can't do something every single day, you know. What else, people? Anything else? Nothing else to talk about? Nothing.
Mary Jo has a question. Please unmute, Mary Jo.
Hello, Mary Jo.
Hi. So would that be dangerous for somebody like that to go off into a cave when they're not really properly prepared?
That's the point. That's exactly the point, Mary Jo. And I think we have no idea about that in our culture because we don't really begin to understand the mind. And even the fact, you know, as Lama Yeshe says in Mahamudra, many people go off and start meditating and end up in a psychiatric hospital. Because I mean, if we talk about the mind from the Buddhist perspective, we're talking about a mind that's existed for countless lifetimes with countless billions of imprints of billions of lifetimes stored in that mind. And if we don't even begin to even understand vaguely what the mind is and even vaguely what concentration or attachment or love or compassion is, if we haven't done masses of work, we don't know what to do with it. Especially you read many, I've had many conversations and heard many stories about people who, let's say, start to meditate, and because they've done some meditation in past lives, they have some kind of experiences, but they literally lose their mind. I mean, there's one, or they become completely arrogant and think they're God. I mean, I remember one fellow in prison, had the ability very easily to get concentration. And he really was convinced he was enlightened. He wrote to Lama Zopa demanding to be identified. He went berserk because he didn't know anything about delusions. I remember many people have incredible blissful experiences when they meditate. And of course, because you've got attachment, they're like greedy vampires for that bliss. There's no understanding of the meaning of meditation. So yes, it's a huge thing to really be so prepared to get off to the mountains and know what the hell you're doing for that period. I mean, even people who are qualified can make such effort that they can get intense, extreme problems and sickness as a result of meditating too hard, for example, of pressuring too hard, because your mind becomes incredibly sensitive. So yes, absolutely. You need good guidance. You need masses of practice, masses of work beforehand. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean we can't try according to our capacity, Mary Jo. That's the point, you know?
Yes,
Yes.
but we shouldn't go too far into the cave either, it sounds like.
If you're not qualified.
Yes.
If you're qualified, and if you're like Geshe Nama Kontrog, who spent his life since a little boy in the monasteries doing all the work, all the practicing, all the ready, and then he went off to the meditation in the cave. He was able to live in the cave for years and years with no food, no sleep, no anything, because he was so highly qualified. But he was qualified. We have to know what our capacity is, you know.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
clear, isn't it, Mary Jo? Very clear.
Yes. Thank you. Mhm.
Absolutely, darling. Yes. What else, people? So I think let's just finish with a little meditation then. Let's just finish by watching our mind. We do our best, okay? Oh, there's Christine. Yes, Christine, sweetheart. What's your question?
Thank you, Venerable.
Yes.
My question is, so in understanding the Western concept of concentration and the Western concept of meditation, how do you reach that potential? What's the best, I mean, besides practice, is it best to be like, for example, in a dark room, in a sensory deprived environment?
Christine, before you continue, you said the Western how do we accomplish that? I don't know what you mean by that, darling. I'm a bit confused.
Because I find that as you said previously, I find that the definition of meditation and concentration in the United States is often confusing and conflicting. People use it in an inappropriate context. That's what I meant.
So therefore, okay, good. I understand. So the question again, darling?
The question is in identifying the ideal situation for meditation for your fullest potential. So for example, what might that be? I mean, obviously there's the daily practice, but would that be a deprived sensory environment?
No, nothing like. No. You wouldn't need to do that, because the point is, if you try to do, okay, you're discussing concentration here. If you try to do concentration meditation, obviously yes, if you want the classic example of going off into retreat, you would choose a very particular place. You'd choose a place that's not kind of busy. You'd choose a place where it's quiet. There's very specific places if you're serious in doing a retreat. Even if you want to go away for a weekend, it makes sense not to go in the middle of New York City or Los Angeles and trying to get concentration. The greatest yogis can accomplish it, no problem. So we clearly have to find the right conditions. But to be sensory deprived, that would not be the point. To be quiet, and then through your own power, as you do get concentration, you would go beyond the senses yourself. But you wouldn't need to find that kind of environment. That would not be the kind of environment that's recommended. No, exactly not that.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So just do a 5 minutes bit of Mahamudra. Okay, the first part. We didn't even discuss the second part, which is the insight part, which is quite different in Mahamudra. But we'll just do the first part. So we just remember, let's just remind ourselves of the sitting posture that all the great meditators over the centuries have found to be most conducive. So just about 8 points, okay? So the ideal would be to have the sitting in the full lotus position. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, it's always auspicious to start your session in that position if you can, even for a moment. It sort of sows the seeds, creates the cause to be able to do it when we do the more advanced practices. But most of us can't do that. So if you can, just for a second. If not that, one step, instep on the other thigh. If not that, ordinary cross-legged. Now, if not that, then sitting in a chair. And if we're in a chair, don't slump into the back of the chair. Sit upright, okay? Sit upright with your feet firmly on the ground. That's the main thing, and your legs. Then your hands in the meditation mudra or gesture, like this. Left underneath, right on top, thumbs touching, forming a triangle in your lap. There are different positions you can use, but that's a classic first one. We can use that. Your body is upright, but relaxed. So relax, keep your body upright, but flop the muscles. Make your muscles very relaxed. Don't hold tension in your shoulders or your abdomen. Relax the muscles. And then your head, several things. Slightly, the chin tucked in. Okay, chin tucked in. Your head slightly tilted forward. The jaw relaxed. The lips slightly apart. So the great yogis who meditate for a long, long time say it's good to have your tongue resting behind the top teeth, just near the palate. That's if you're meditating for many hours or a long time altogether. It stops you from dribbling. It stops you from having to swallow the spit. So the tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, just near the palate. Your head slightly forward, chin tucked in, lips apart, jaw relaxed. And then finally, your eyes looking down under your eyelids. In fact, contrary to Christine's point about, dark, you wouldn't do that. The yogis who meditate all day, every day would have their eyes open. And because their concentration is so subtle, they wouldn't get distracted, but the light would come in and that would help the mind stay sharp. But most of us will get distracted. So have your eyes lightly closed with your eyes looking down as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground beneath your eyelids. So settle into this position. Your back, your hands, shoulders relaxed, head tilted forward, jaw relaxed, tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, eyes looking down, lips apart. So now just for a few minutes, we're just going to pay attention. Just do your best. Don't get squeezed. Don't get worried about it. We're going to pay attention with determination not to get distracted for about 3 or 4 minutes. We're going to pay attention to whatever thoughts pop up. You don't engage in them. You don't decide to have thoughts. You allow them to come and you allow them to go. You simply pay attention each moment to whatever the mind does. You stay focused. You don't follow the thoughts. You stay focused. Pay attention. Just pay attention. Don't space out. Don't engage in the thoughts and don't space out. Just watch the thoughts. So you relax now. It was about 3 or 4 minutes, just to taste. So that's a good thing to do, you know. The key thing is, again, just the key thing is allow the thoughts to come, but you have to be alert, you have to be sharp. And the tendency to space out is so powerful. The tendency to absorb into the thoughts, or the tendency to kind of feel comfortable and kind of have the mind sort of sink. No, you've got to be watching like a hawk, but relaxed. Watching like a hawk, but relaxed. This is a combination you need, just to simply observe. You've got to be alert, because every time the attention wanders off, this other part of your mind, mindfulness, like watching, like a mum, like a mother, it'll bring the attention back to the object. So as many parts of your mind have to train to do their jobs, you know. So it's not just spacing out. It's not just feeling nice. It's not just relaxing. It's to get the mind to be super sharp, but to be calm. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, darlings, that's it. Where's my glasses? I can't see you now. I can't see my glasses either.
Venerable Robina, may we offer you a mandala?
Come on then, let's do it. We thank the Buddha for the teachings, all the blessings we receive from all the holy beings. We offer the universe as a gratitude, yes.
This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. We imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. May my Venerable Lama's lives be firm, so white divine actions spread in the 10 directions, and the torch of teachings of Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kandiya Tayame.
Good, darling people. Thank you so much. And we
Thank
just
you so much.
we just dedicate it kind of just in our own words, just thinking these seeds we've planted, all this 90 minutes we've been together, all the seeds we've planted, because nothing goes astray. May we nourish them from this moment forward with our effort, with our practice, never giving up, one step at a time, with enthusiasm, with confidence, never giving up the goal, no matter how long it takes to achieve this marvelous potential so we can be of benefit to others. Jangchub Semcho Grimpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Guchig, Ke Panyampa Me Payang, Gong Ne Gondu Pavashok. And may this amazing attitude of great compassion, bodhicitta, grow and grow in the hearts of all. And may all our holy lamas live long, the knowledge holders in the world, may they live long. We need them badly. Thank you, darlings. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. And all your lovely questions. Thank you, everybody. Marvelous. Good discussion.
Thank you,
Much
Venerable
love.
Robina. Thank you so
Sweetheart.
much.
Bye-bye, darlings.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.